Okay, so I know not everyone is planning on polypainting their final, and again, however you choose to get this done is really up to you. But let's talk about if you do go the route of polypainting and how can we get this into Maya in a fairly quick and painless, or as quickly and painlessly as we possibly can. And just so that the polypaint is more obvious, I'm going to let's see. Let's just make this a more natural color. For starters, I'm going to again go back to color. Let's fill this object here. Why is this? Oh, I turned up the RGB. That's why. So let's turn this all the way up to 100. I'm going to color fill this again, and then I'm going to take like a darker value, and then I'm going to go very heavy-handed on this example. Just don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about polypainting because we did that in this video just before this here. And yeah, so I have the color spray open, and the color spray is going to help me get a lot of color variety without me having to constantly sample and like blend and etc. Right, so I'm going to do this, and like, let's take a little like brighter color here, and then let's do like a stripe or something on top of the head. Just like this, and just like this. Alright, and then why don't I just make this, I'm going to put a bunch of patterns. And this patterning, I'm going to do like a drag rex, and then we'll turn an alpha on. This is not going to look good. I apologize, but just for the sake of demonstration, let's take this one here, and then let's take the RGB intensity all the way up, and I have these this black color, and then I'm going to make these dots. So I want these dots kind of obnoxious so that you can see that it works inside of Maya once I get this process going here. Okay, so let's say this is our wonderful polypaint job. Go me. Good job here. I am then going to duplicate this model here. And you're probably tired of this whole like duplicating your model and then deleting subdivision levels and all that, but just the reality of it is this is how it works, right? Okay. So here I'm going to rename this something like 4 UVs here. Let's hide the original, so I just have this to look at, and then what I'm going to do is go down to the geometry tab here. I'm going to go back down to your lowest subdivision level, because basically if you try to unwrap a very dense mesh inside of ZBrush, it's going to not be happy. It'll take a while and you could potentially crash, right? So I'm going to go down to your lowest subdivision level. I'm going to hit the delete higher button here, and then that gets rid of all that. And now I have this low poly model with polypaint data and no subdivision levels. Let's double click on this little divider button here, and that will roll out or expand this little bar, which will let me hit the Z plugin, and then I can go to the UV master here. I will drag this over, dock this over here, and now I can start unwrapping my model here. I'm going to show basically 2, maybe 3 ways of doing this. The first one being the simplest. And the first thing you want to do is to hit this button, work on clone. This is like the best way to do it and make sure that things stay safe and you're not going to mess up your original model here. I hit work on clone, and then you'll see that it made a new tool here. Right, so it's the same thing, but now we see that we lose the polypaint data here. Right, so there's no polypaint data. And then the simplest way is just to hit this unwrap button, and that should be it. So it's going to do this auto unwrap process. It might take a little while, but okay, there we go. So it tells you what it did. It made 21 UV islands here. If you want to check, I can hit the check seams button, and then you'll see where it made the UV seams here. I can uncheck that to exit this. I can hit the flatten button, and then, okay, so it didn't actually make any UV islands, really. This is one giant one here. And if this is like a 3D view too, so I can rotate around, and if I hit the unflatten button, it didn't quite unwrap. I think that's a different feature using like one of these tools down here. But it's essentially just literally unwrapping your 3D model into a flat sheet. That's the simplest way of doing it. If you want to just call it that and then move forward and you don't want to deal with anything else, I can't say that I blame you. You might have to export your texture at a higher res to compensate for like the inefficient UVs, but that's really up to you. But before we move further, I think it's good to talk about the rest of these tools here. And maybe the easiest way to do everything, I think, is just to select things and then polygroup them. So I'm going to hit, I'll marquee select like the neck and the head, polygroup that. I will marquee select the head itself, polygroup that. I'm going to definitely marquee select and grab this tail, Control W to polygroup the mask selection, and then we can say grab the more cylindrical forms of our model here, which will be the legs. Control W. Let's be a little bit cleaner here. So I'll Control W, look around and see if I have accidentally done anything weird with my polygroups. I will maybe Control Shift click this to hide it, and then I think that will allow me to select the legs a little bit more easily. The front legs. Control W, and I mean it's not totally clean, but I think that's clean enough here. And then from here, I could hit the polygroup button, and then I'll hit unwrap and let it do its thing. So I've had this happen where if I've done this like as part of the demonstration, I'll do it's just the auto unwrap, and then I'll do an unwrap here. Like it doesn't actually do it. Let's see if it does. For once it did. But if it doesn't, you just have to unflatten and then just do this process again here. So then this is my new UVs, and that's going to be a lot easier to deal with. Like I think this is a much more optimized mesh. I mean, you could do a lot more, to be honest, but that's what this process is. I could also just say like take the move brush in this flatten view if I needed to adjust anything. I have mirroring on, so let's turn that off. I could manually do this and move things around. I can smooth it a little bit, or we can activate the move tool. Control Shift click on certain UV islands here. I can reset this pivot, and I can move things around. Maybe I'll mask this and move this over here, and you could have a little bit more control over how you UV your models if you wish to do so. Oops, what am I doing? I have no idea why I did that. I'm going to undo that, and then we'll hit unflatten, and we'll hit flatten again. Oh. There, okay, yeah. So as you can see, it did something funny when I hit the unwrap button while it was unwrapped and flattened. And let's check this again. I'm going to flatten this. Cool. We're back to where we were. I'm going to hit unflatten, and I know there are a bunch of other settings that we could mess with, but I think for the sake of this project, I'm going to skip it and just make life a little bit easier. So now that we're done with this, I'm going to hit the copy UVs button here. I'm going to go back to our original tool, and then here I'm going to hit paste UVs. And now this model, if I hit the check scenes button, has the UVs from this onto here. So now my job is to go back and, so you subdivided it 5 times, I'm going to subdivide it 5 times as well. 3, 4, 5. And then we can project our data back onto this one here. So yeah, I know you all are very tired of this whole duplicating and projecting mess, but I'm sorry, this is how we do things. So I'm going to hit project all, and then we'll hit D to go up in subdivision levels, hit project all again, D again, project all, D, project all. And then D, project all again. This last bit is always the most time-consuming one because it is the highest number of polygons to project. So now we have this new model, which has, again, all our subdivision levels, all of our detail, all our polypaint information, and then as well as UVs. So now my job is to go to ZPlugin. I'm going to click on the multi-map exporter, and then activate this texture from Polypaint button. And then I can decide what size texture it is. I think 4096. I mean, this is very generous but since we're rendering, I don't feel too bad about doing 4096. Especially since if you just did the one-click auto unwrap, then you'll probably need at least 4096 to compensate for those kind of yucky UVs here. And maybe I'll even take the matte border, which is the edge padding, up higher because I am going so high, like 12. This flip V, I have it turned on because if I don't turn it on, what's going to happen is the texture gets exported upside down, and then but the UVs don't on the model, so you have to go into Photoshop and flip them manually. So just hit the flip V icon, and then you should be good to go. I can hit the, now they create all maps, and then I'm going to call this, we'll call this one creature UVs here. So there we go. I exported that that TIFF file, waiting for it to happen, and there we go. We're done. So if I now go back into Maya, or you know what, let's back up. I need to decimate this because I don't necessarily want to bring 3.1 million verts into Maya here. Let's go into the Z plugin menu. Oops, it's already up here. Sorry. I'm gonna hit the decimation master, and now just like I was saying or alluding to earlier in the previous videos, if I hit keep UVs and using keep polypaint, I think these default settings are fine. And then since I'm only processing one tool, let's hit preprocess current or use one of these presets. Wait, no. If you use these presets, I don't think it'll keep any of these. So this will just crunch your polys, but it won't keep any of this stuff here. So in this case, I am going to want to just do the preprocess current. This always takes a little longer than I expect it to. I think it's almost done here. almost done. Okay, almost. Come on. Alright, so this is done pre-processing, and then I'm just going to leave the, oh, wait, no. This is using the settings from before. Let's take this back down to the defaults, which is 20. I'm going to hit this make current. And now we're at 630 something versus, what, 3 million here. And now you see it kept the poly paints, and it should have the UVs. So now, basically just going to export this. Since I'm just doing one subtool, I'm not going to use Subtool Master. I'll just export this. We'll name it Creature UV Mesh here. And now what I'll do is I will import that into Maya. Okay, so I'm going to switch panels from camera to perspective here. Let's drag these two in here. Okay, so you'll see it. Where is it? So you see I have 3 files. I have the OBJ, the MTL, and the TIFF file. TIFF file being the texture page. And so when you do this, like I was saying before in class, if you drag both of them in, that's kind of fine. The MTL file is just basically trying to describe the material that was assigned to this OBJ. You're typically not supposed to drag that into Maya, because when you import an OBJ, it'll look for an MTL file, and if there is one, it'll assign it like a shader. But just to show you this error message, if I drag this inside here, it says unrecognized file type. That is referring to the .mtl file, which is completely fine. Just hit confirm and you're good to go. And then we have this. Our creature is very tiny from ZBrush, and I'll just scale the creature up to about the size of this scale reference model here. Something, well, I guess technically something maybe like this here. And then if I click off of this, okay, so we have this model. There is no texture, and that's fine. I'm going to hit the hypershade, and then from here, I don't think I have an appropriate shader that would approximate what you're trying to do. So let's go ahead in the create menu. I'm going to go down to the Arnold tab, and then let's go to shader, and I'm going to create an AI standard surface shader here. Let's click on our mesh. I'm going to scroll in here. I'm going to right click on top of this shader at the top bar. Make sure you're right clicking at the top and not down at the bottom, otherwise you see you don't get anything. But if I right click near the name, sorry, can't speak, and then hit assign material to viewport selection, you'll see that it's assigned this there. Let's close that here, and then you'll see you can always look for AI standard surface 11 somewhere. It's usually at the bottom here, and we'll call this, I'm going to double click on this text here, and we'll rename this creature fur. Get rid of that uppercase U. And now if I click on this and go back to my attribute editor here, let's click on this button there, or this text here. In the color, you see how there is a checkerboard icon? If I click on that checkerboard icon, I can then plug in a file, and in this file I can point it to, I probably should have copied all this in there, but it's okay, or this copied in now. So I'm going to copy this TIFF all the way over to my Arnold render master file, and I'm going to put it inside of source images here. right here. And so now I can hit source images and then point it to this TIFF. And you can see this this texture it made right there. And there we go. We have our model from ZBrush where it was UV'd in ZBrush, and then the texture was baked out from ZBrush here. Let's change a little bit. Let's see. Let's change this. Where is it? Here. Let's change the shader to kind of match what I think you're going for here, and I think that is based off of the kind of stylization. You probably don't want as much specular. I'm going to close the output window. I don't really need it. Close this. Why is this? Okay, that's weird. That's new. I don't know why it keeps opening here. And then I'm going to. You can just take the weight all the way down if you don't want any specular at all. But if you want a little bit, I can also just increase the roughness. And as you see, as I let's open up the Arnold render view, and then I'm going to just render from the perspective camera. I'll hit play. I'm going to dock this into my UI here. Where is it? Okay, let's switch back to my on-road shading tests UI here. And then that should dock everything for me. Cool. Like that. And alright, make sure I'm rendering from the correct camera, and then I'll hit update full scene. Why is it not? Oh, let's turn on the resolution gate so I know what I'm framing. Okay, there we go. Let's try this again. Still not. Okay, I'm gonna go back to camera 1 and make sure something's weird here. There we go. And now if you take a look at this more carefully, if I change these render settings here, we can, increase the roughness so that we get even less specular. I could take this down and get just like a slight specular with this slight weight to it. But other than that, that's basically how you would UV within ZBrush, decimate keeping those UVs, and exporting the texture, and then importing everything into Maya, and then making a new shader just so you can see what you're doing. Alright, cool. Hope that helps.